How did American families manage to feed hungry mouths on a tight budget? During tough times, creativity flourished in kitchens across the country. Let's explore iconic, budget-friendly meals that defined an era and stick around, because there's a nostalgic dish waiting at the end. Onions stuffed with grape nuts. Set against the backdrop of World War I America, onions became a kitchen staple because they were easy to grow. Grape nuts, despite its misleading name, became one of the most widely available cereals, though many would describe it as bland and tasteless. Families, however, had to make do with what they had, and one of the most unusual dishes to emerge was onions stuffed with grape nuts. I remember trying strange combinations as a kid. Ever mix ketchup with everything just to see if it worked? Oddly enough, stuffing onions with a plain cereal became a creative hit during the war era. The strong flavor of onions paired with the crunch of grape nuts was surprisingly popular. Who would have thought such a combo would catch on? But that's what scarcity does, forces you to get creative. What's the weirdest food combination you've ever tried? Share in the comments below. And up next, a dish where mashed potatoes played a starring role. Stay tuned. Bubble and squeak. During World War II, food shortages forced families to get creative, and bubble and squeak became a popular dish. It was made from leftover mashed potatoes and any odds and ends found in the kitchen, like cabbage, carrots, or scraps of meat. Simple, but it was the ultimate no-waste meal. I've had my fair share of leftover creations. Sometimes, it's just about tossing everything into a pan, hoping it works out. There's something nostalgic about meals like bubble and squeak. It brings back the ingenuity of making the most out of what you have, no matter how little. What I love most about this dish is how it embraced the spirit of making something delicious from nothing. What would you throw into your version of bubble and squeak? Up next, we've got a recipe that proves even during tough times, a sweet treat like sponge cake wasn't entirely out of reach. Keep watching. Sponge cake. Sponge cake may have originated in the Renaissance, but during tough times, families had to get creative. With ingredients like eggs and butter hard to come by, people still found a way to enjoy this sweet treat. By replacing butter with margarine and skipping the eggs entirely, they made do with what they had, producing a cake that wasn't as fluffy as we know today, but still felt like a luxury. I remember baking with my family when we were short on ingredients, trying to make something delicious out of the bare essentials. It's amazing how much you can do with just flour, sugar, and a little bit of ingenuity. Those times taught me that baking isn't always about perfection. It's about making the best of what you've got. Can you imagine making a cake with just the basics? Let me know your best baking hacks in the comments. Next up, we explore a dish that didn't need fancy ingredients, the rise of simple, everyday cereals. Stick around. Cereal for breakfast. In the post-war era, cereal became a staple for many American families, especially with the rise of convenience foods. Quick, easy, and requiring no cooking, cereals fit right into the hectic routines of the time. While cereal was marketed as a nutritious start to the day, many families couldn't afford milk, so they ate it with water instead. It wasn't the same experience, but in hard times, you made do with what you had. I remember trying cereal with water once as a kid. And let's just say it wasn't the best breakfast I ever had. But it did give me a glimpse of what families back then went through, and how a simple bowl of cereal could still be comforting, even without the creamy milk we take for granted. Ever tried cereal with water instead of milk? How would you like it? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And coming up next, the humble meatloaf, another thrifty favorite that made the most of limited resources. Meatloaf. Meatloaf, a dish with origins tracing back to 5th century Europe, evolved into a beloved staple in American households. Its rise in popularity during challenging economic times was due to its resourcefulness. By combining ground meat with ingredients like breadcrumbs, cereals, and eggs, families found an affordable way to create a hearty meal that could stretch to feed everyone. For me, meatloaf brings back memories of family dinners. We'd all gather around the table, and it amazed me how my mom could transform such simple ingredients into a flavorful, satisfying dish. The smell of it baking in the oven, with a crispy outer crust and moist interior, was enough to make our mouths water. It was one of those meals that always seemed to bring us closer together, and it became a tradition that we cherished. Did your family have its own special meatloaf recipe, or perhaps a twist on this classic dish? Casseroles. Casseroles became a lifesaver for post-war moms who needed quick, easy meals to feed their families. The beauty of casseroles was in their simplicity. Just combine whatever leftovers or old veggies were on hand, throw them in a pan, and bake. It was a great way to avoid wasting food while still providing a filling, hearty meal that required minimal effort. From meat-based casseroles to veggie-only versions, this dish could be easily adapted to fit what was available in the kitchen. In my family, casseroles were a regular feature at the dinner table. I remember my mom experimenting with different combinations of ingredients, tossing in whatever she had left over from the week. It was like a culinary puzzle, and somehow, it always turned out delicious. Whether it was a cheesy vegetable casserole or a hearty pasta bake, it was a dish that never failed to satisfy. What's your favorite casserole ingredient? Maybe it's cheese, or perhaps you prefer a heartier meat-filled option. Spam. First hitting shelves in 1937, Spam quickly became a household name, especially during World War II. It gained massive popularity among soldiers for its convenience. It didn't need refrigeration, thanks to the sodium nitrate used to preserve it. This canned meat became a staple not just for troops, but also for families back home who lacked refrigerators. Made from pork shoulder, ham, salt, and water, Spam was an affordable option that fit into almost any meal. I remember my grandparents talking about Spam, how it was always in their pantry, ready to be sliced up for sandwiches or fried for dinner. It may not have been gourmet, but it was filling and versatile, a lifeline during tough times. Even now, Spam still sparks memories for those who grew up with it in the post-war years. Would you eat something that doesn't need refrigeration? It's hard to imagine now, but Spam played a significant role in keeping meals on the table. Speaking of adaptable meals, let's move on to chop suey. Chop suey. Chop suey, a dish that became widely popular in the 1950s, was an easy, budget-friendly one-pan meal with origins in San Francisco's Chinese immigrant community. It became an instant hit due to its adaptability and accessibility, especially in post-war America. Made from simple ingredients like meat, bean sprouts, noodles, onions, and celery, it was perfect for families who needed to stretch their food supply but still wanted something filling and flavorful. I remember hearing stories from my family about how chop suey became a weekly tradition in their home. It was a dish that could be whipped up in no time, yet it tasted like something you'd get at a restaurant. To this day, it reminds me of the comfort and resourcefulness of those times. How does this dish compare to your Thursday night takeout? It's amazing how this mix of odds and ends became a go-to favorite. Up next, we'll explore a dish that adds a bit of luxury to the budget-friendly mix: Salsbury steak. Salsbury steak. Salsbury steak became a popular choice in the 1970s for families who wanted a meal that felt a bit more luxurious without breaking the bank. Made from simple ground beef, mixed with breadcrumbs and eggs, and simmered in a rich gravy of beef broth, onions, and mushrooms, this dish had all the flavor and appeal of a high-end meal. It was hearty, flavorful, and easy to make, perfect for families looking to stretch their food budget while still enjoying a bit of indulgence. I remember my family often made Salsbury steak for special occasions, even though it was one of the more affordable meals. The rich, savory smell that filled the kitchen made it feel like we were dining at a fancy restaurant. It was a dish that brought a sense of comfort and celebration, even during tougher times. Ever had a dish that felt fancier than it was? Salsbury steak definitely hit that mark for many families. Up next, we'll dive into the world of stuffed bell peppers. Stuffed bell peppers. Stuffed bell peppers have been a go-to dish for families for decades, and it's easy to see why. They're versatile, affordable, and packed with flavor. This dish typically involves bell peppers filled with a hearty mixture of ground meat, rice, tomato sauce, and spices, making it a perfect blend of textures and tastes. Plus, it's a meal that can easily be adapted depending on what's in your pantry. Growing up, stuffed bell peppers were a staple at our family dinners. I remember how my mom would put them in the oven, and the smell of roasted peppers and savory meat would fill the house. Everyone had their favorite version of the dish. Some liked extra cheese on top, while others preferred a little more spice in the filling. No matter the variation, it always brought us together around the dinner table. What was your favorite stuffed bell pepper recipe? Stay tuned for a nostalgic dish that many families still make today. Chicken a la king. Chicken a la king was a popular dish in the 1970s, especially for families looking to make the most of their leftovers. This comforting dish combined leftover chicken with a creamy sauce made from butter, flour, chicken broth, and milk. Mushrooms, peas, and carrots added texture and flavor, while it was typically served over rice, noodles, or even toast. It was a perfect way to stretch leftover chicken into a satisfying meal that could feed the whole family. I vividly remember my grandmother making chicken a la king, when we had extra chicken from Sunday dinner. The rich, creamy sauce was always the highlight, and I loved how the vegetables added pops of color and flavor. It was the kind of meal that made you feel warm inside, no matter how simple the ingredients were. What's your go-to leftover chicken dish? Stick around because up next is another classic that families love to prepare on a budget: beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff. Beef stroganoff, originally from Russia, became a budget-friendly favorite in American households during the 1970s. The dish featured tender strips of beef, sautéed with onions and mushrooms, all enveloped in a rich, creamy sauce made from sour cream and beef broth. Despite its gourmet flavor, stroganoff could be made with more affordable cuts of meat, making it accessible for families trying to stretch their food budgets. Growing up, my family loved making beef stroganoff. It was one of those meals that felt special, even though it was made with simple ingredients. I remember the aroma of sautéing onions filling the kitchen and how we'd fight over the last spoonful of that creamy sauce. It was a dish that brought everyone to the table with eager appetites. Have you ever tried making stroganoff at home? If you're a fan of this creamy classic, you'll love the next budget-friendly meal: goulash. Keep watching for a surprising twist on this versatile dish. Goulash. Goulash, a comforting blend of Eastern European and American flavors, became a go-to meal for large families in the U.S., especially during tough times. The dish typically featured ground beef, macaroni, tomatoes, onions, garlic, and a medley of spices, simmered together to create a flavorful, hearty stew. Its versatility made it a hit, as families could adapt the recipe to whatever ingredients they had on hand, making it as budget-friendly as it was delicious. In my household, goulash was always a staple when we needed to stretch ingredients. I still remember my mom tossing in leftover veggies or whatever pasta was available. It was one of those dishes where no two batches were the same, yet it always brought the same warmth and comfort. The smell of tomatoes and garlic simmering on the stove still takes me back to those family dinners. What's your favorite comfort food? Stay tuned for another classic budget meal that kept families going: vegetable stir-fry. Vegetable stir-fry. Vegetable stir-fry is a perfect example of how healthy, budget-friendly meals can be packed with flavor. This dish typically combines mixed vegetables like broccoli, carrots, bell peppers, and snow peas, sautéed with soy sauce and garlic, served over rice or noodles. What makes stir-fry so great is its versatility. Whether you're using fresh, frozen, or even leftover veggies, you can create a delicious meal in minutes. Plus, it's an easy way to pack in nutrients without spending a fortune. Growing up, stir-fry nights were a family favorite. My mom would gather whatever veggies we had in the fridge, toss them in a wok with some soy sauce, and dinner was ready in no time. I still love making it today, experimenting with different vegetable combinations and sauces. It's a meal that reminds me of simplicity, yet never lacks in taste. What's your favorite veggie combination for stir-fry? Lentil soup. Lentil soup has been a staple in kitchens for generations, especially when budgets were tight and nutrition was essential. This hearty, low-fat, fiber-rich dish combines lentils with simple ingredients like carrots, onions, celery, and garlic, simmered in a flavorful broth. Packed with vitamins and minerals, lentils are an excellent source of protein and provide a satisfying meal without the need for expensive cuts of meat. Growing up, lentil soup was always on our family's menu during colder months. My parents would throw all the ingredients into a big pot, and within an hour, the house was filled with the comforting aroma of slow-cooked goodness. The best part? There were always leftovers, and it somehow tasted even better the next day. It's amazing how something so simple can be so nutritious and filling. If you haven't tried making lentil soup, you're missing out on a classic that's not only good for the wallet, but great for the soul too. Potato and cabbage hash. Potato and cabbage hash is a simple, budget-friendly meal that has been a go-to for many families through tough times. With just a few basic ingredients, potatoes, cabbage, onions, garlic, and some seasoning, you can create a hearty dish that satisfies. The addition of turmeric, though optional, not only adds a beautiful golden color, but also provides anti-inflammatory health benefits. I remember my grandmother making potato and cabbage hash when I was young. It didn't take long to prepare, and I always loved the crispy edges of the potatoes mixed with the tender cabbage. Sometimes she'd throw in whatever leftover vegetables we had in the kitchen, turning it into a unique dish every time. This simple meal proves that you don't need expensive ingredients to make something delicious and nourishing. It's the kind of dish that brings comfort, especially when served on cold days or when you're looking for something easy to make with pantry staples. Cabbage soup. Cabbage soup is the ultimate example of simple, healthy cooking. Made from basic ingredients like cabbage, carrots, onions, garlic, and vegetable broth, this dish is packed with nutrients without breaking the bank. The combination of these fresh vegetables results in a light but satisfying meal that's perfect for anyone looking to eat well on a budget. My family often turned to cabbage soup during colder months. The house would fill with the warm, earthy aroma as the broth simmered on the stove. It was one of those meals that didn't need much effort, but still managed to feel hearty and comforting. Sometimes we'd add a splash of vinegar or a few chili flakes for an extra kick, and it always turned out delicious. So, what about you? Are you a fan of cabbage, or does it need some convincing to make it onto your dinner table? Give this nourishing soup a try. You might just find a new favorite. Potato soup. Potato soup is the epitome of creamy comfort in a bowl. With simple ingredients like potatoes, onions, vegetable broth, and cream, it transforms into a rich, velvety dish that warms you from the inside out. Perfect for fall or winter, this soup is an easy go-to when you need something filling and satisfying. Growing up, potato soup was a family staple on chilly evenings. I remember the smell of onions and potatoes simmering in broth, and the magic moment when cream was added to give the soup its signature richness. Sometimes we'd top it with crispy bacon bits or fresh chives for a little extra flavor, but even on its own, it was the perfect cozy meal. Whether you're making it for a quick dinner or a weekend treat, potato soup never disappoints. What about you? What's your favorite soup recipe for fall, and have you ever tried making this classic comfort food? Rice and beans. Rice and beans is a simple, budget-friendly staple that has nourished families for generations. With just a few ingredients, rice, canned beans, onions, and garlic, you can create a hearty meal that's both filling and nutritious. The beans provide protein, while the rice serves as the perfect canvas to soak up all the delicious flavors. Growing up, rice and beans was a frequent dinner in our home. I can still remember my mom adding her secret blend of spices to the dish, making it taste like something much more elaborate. It was one of those meals that brought comfort and warmth, no matter how simple the ingredients. Of course, the trickiest part for me has always been perfecting the rice. It either came out too sticky or too dry. There was rarely an in-between. Have you mastered the art of cooking rice, or does it always give you trouble too? Let me know your secrets for this timeless dish. Cornbread. Cornbread is one of those versatile dishes found in many cultures, with each region adding its own twist. The basic ingredients, corn flour, eggs, baking powder, oil, and water, come together to create a simple yet delicious bread that can be enjoyed in so many ways. Whether it's served as a side for chili, slathered in butter, or sweetened with honey, cornbread remains a beloved staple across generations. In my family, cornbread was always a must at big dinners, especially during the holidays. My favorite version was slightly sweet, with just the right amount of crumble, and we'd always have extra butter on hand. It's amazing how such a simple recipe could bring so much comfort and joy to the table. Cornbread is also great because it can be adapted to whatever you have on hand. Sometimes we'd throw in a bit of cheese or even jalapenos for an extra kick. What's your favorite way to enjoy cornbread? Tuna casserole. Tuna casserole became a post-war classic in American homes, especially in the 1950s. With ingredients like canned tuna, noodles, peas, and a creamy soup base, it was the perfect combination of cheap, filling, and convenient. Families could whip it up quickly using pantry staples, making it a go-to meal for busy moms looking to stretch their budgets. I still remember my grandmother making tuna casserole for family dinners. The smell of it baking in the oven would fill the house, and everyone would crowd around the table, eagerly awaiting a warm, comforting plate. It wasn't just about the taste, it was about the sense of togetherness it brought. Did your family have their own special version of tuna casserole? Maybe they added extra veggies or topped it with crunchy breadcrumbs. Up next, we'll look at another nostalgic dish that might remind you of simpler times. Get ready for a childhood classic that's still loved today. Macaroni and cheese. Macaroni and cheese, or simply mac and cheese, became a beloved staple during tough times, thanks to its simplicity and affordability. Using just elbow macaroni, a creamy cheese sauce, and milk, families could create a warm, filling meal that felt like a treat, despite being easy on the budget. During post-war America, this dish became a comfort food for many households, offering a little indulgence in the midst of financial hardships. I remember my family making mac and cheese for nearly every occasion. Whether it was a quick weeknight dinner or a side dish at a big family gathering, The cheesy, gooey goodness was always a hit. Sometimes we'd jazz it up with breadcrumbs or leftover veggies, making it our own special version. What about you? Do you make your mac and cheese from scratch, or do you stick with the convenience of a box? Next, we'll explore another dish that brought families together around the dinner table. Don't miss it. Peanut butter and jelly sandwich. Peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, often referred to as PB&J, became a go-to lunch option for American families during tough times. Affordable, nutritious, and easy to make, this simple meal combined peanut butter spread on bread with a layer of jelly, offering a balance of protein and sweetness. It became a childhood staple, especially popular in school lunches during the mid-20th century. Growing up, my lunchbox always seemed to have a PB&J sandwich. It was a reliable favorite, and my family loved how quick it was to prepare. I remember experimenting with different types of jelly, sometimes even adding a slice of banana for variety. What about you? Are you team grape jelly or strawberry when it comes to your PB&J? Shepherd's pie. Shepherd's pie is a classic comfort dish that originated in the UK but became a favorite in American households, especially during tough times. Made with ground meat, often beef or lamb, mixed vegetables, and topped with mashed potatoes, it's a great way to stretch leftovers into a hearty meal. Once baked, the mashed potatoes form a golden, crispy crust, making it even more satisfying. I remember my family turning Sunday dinner leftovers into shepherd's pie for Monday night. It was always exciting to see how creative we could get with the vegetables, and whether we'd add some extra cheese on top for that extra layer of richness. Do you prefer your shepherd's pie with or without cheese on top? Let me know in the comments. Next up, let's explore another classic dish that you might not have expected to see on this list. Get ready for a surprise. Oatmeal. Oatmeal has long been a go-to breakfast for families on a budget. Its simplicity and versatility make it a staple in households across the world. Cooked with either water or milk, oatmeal can be sweetened with a little sugar, topped with fresh fruit, or even spiced up with cinnamon. It's one of those meals that's comforting, filling, and full of potential for personalization. I remember cold winter mornings when a hot bowl of oatmeal with a sprinkle of brown sugar and a handful of raisins was the perfect way to start the day. Not only was it delicious, but it was also an affordable and nutritious option to keep everyone satisfied. What's your favorite oatmeal topping? Fruit, nuts, or a drizzle of honey? Let me know how you make yours. Did we spark any memories of budget-friendly meals from your past? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this nostalgic journey, hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss out on more trips down memory lane.